In this movie, I want to consider the issue of persistent data inside Unity. Now, in a number of other 3D Motive courses, I covered in depth how to save data from a file and to read it back at a later time to create save game states. In those videos, I demonstrated how to do that using XML files as well as binary files. But since the release of Unity 5.3, there has become an easier way to do this using JSON. That is JSON, which stands for JavaScript Object Notation. And in this movie, I want to get started at creating a scene that will be able to remember the position of the player as well as their rotation and restore the player to that position and orientation at the beginning of each scene, so that when the scene ends, it will record the position and the rotation of the object, and when the scene is resumed, it will retrieve that data from the file and restore the player back to that position and orientation. We can use JSON files and JSON data to do that, and it's pretty simple to do, and here we're going to see how. So here we have a scene, and here is my player character, and the first thing I want to do is to create a completely new script file. So I'm going to move down here to the project panel and right click and choose create, and then choose C# script from the context menu. I will simply call this position saver and press enter on the keyboard here. And when I do that, it creates a completely new script file. I will double click on that to open it inside MonoDevelop here. And you can see here we have our position saver file. I'm just going to increase the size of that code. And now we're ready to get started and using JSON. So since I want to save the last position and the rotation of the object, I'm going to insert some new variables. I'm going to insert a vector3 variable, which is going to be called last position. And I'm going to set the default value of vector3.0. So I'm going to set that to the initial position. And I'm also going to save the rotation of the object. And since rotations are stored as quaternions, I'm going to create a new quaternion variable. So last rotation, and that will equal quaternion.identity, like so. And also I want to retrieve a reference to the transform component because I need to read the last position and the rotation from that component. So I'm going to choose transform, like so, and call it this transform. And that's going to equal the value of null. Now inside the awake function, I'm going to retrieve a reference to the transform component. So I'm going to choose this transform equals get component, and it's going to get a reference to the transform variable here. So that's absolutely fine. Now I want to record that data when the object is destroyed. That is, when the scene ends and the object is destroyed, I want to record the last position and the last rotation data. Now Unity implements or handles an event that we can call automatically, and that's called onDestroy. So if I use onDestroy here, this function will be run automatically by Unity when the object is destroyed, and so long as we don't destroy the object before the scene terminates, the onDestroy event will happen at the end of the scene. So I'm going to use the onDestroy event here, and I want to take this data and convert it into a JSON string. Now this is pretty easy to do. All we have to do is choose JSON utility, like so, dot, and we can choose JSON to JSON. It allows us to put in an object, in this case, this object. So I'm just going to put this, and it will convert it into a string. So I'm just going to choose JSON string, like so. Actually, JSON should be entirely uppercase because it's an acronym. So JSON string equals JSON utility to JSON. Now, rather than put that in the onDestroy event at the moment, what I am going to do is I'm going to just shift that temporarily to the start function, just so that we can print a message to the console and see the value of that string. So under start, I'm going to actually use a debug.log statement to print the value of that JSON string to the console. Press Ctrl S on the keyboard here. So I'm going to go back to Unity and let that code compile. I will switch to the console here and clear this of any messages. And then, before I do that, actually, I need to attach the script to the Ethan object. So I'm going to select the Ethan object, go back to the project panel, grab the position saver script and put that onto the Ethan object here. and we can confirm that by checking in the object inspector that we have the position saver script attached. If I go back to the console and I press play on the toolbar, you can see that now the data of this object has been encoded into a JSON string. So I can see that the last position X, Y, and Z values, along with the last rotation values, notice the W component for the quaternion. So we have managed to save all of that data from the object and convert it into a JSON string. This is at least the main process involved. We are of course going to add more complexity to this scene, but that's how to get started with JSON data. In the next video, we're going to complete this project to implement loading and saving. One thing I should emphasize about this JSON technique, however, is that it's not just only good for save game states. Of course, you can use it for that. But another means for which it's very, very useful is to take object data on this system to convert it into a JSON string. You can then send that over a network connection and reconstruct the same object on the destination computer. So it's also really great for sending objects between different systems. But in the next video, we're going to implement the load and save functionality using JSON.